Now the verses that we're going to look at today is found in John chapter 7 and verse 47 to 49. And it says, Then answered them the Pharisees, Are ye also deceived? Have any of the rulers or of the Pharisees believed on him? But this people who knoweth not the law are cursed. Now in these verses, particularly in verse number 48, where it says, Have any of the rulers or of the Pharisees believed on him? The Pharisees are making an argument to the officers on why they should not believe that Jesus is the Messiah. And their argument is based on the fact of who they are. They were saying, We are the Pharisees. Look at how we dress. Look at how we act. Look at our position in society. Look at our learning. We know the Scriptures better than anybody else. And how many of us have believed in Jesus? Well, the answer was none, publicly anyway. So they were using this here as an argument to say that Jesus was not the Christ, because the most learned men in the land, none of them believed in him. But the only people that were believing in Jesus were these people who didn't even know the law, and they were cursed. Now, these sort of arguments come to ourselves as well. We know that these Pharisees were wrong because Jesus was indeed the Messiah. But these same arguments come to ourselves today. We have men in pulpits, men who dress a certain way, have a certain amount of learning, and they tell us certain things. And then we have to make a judgment on whether what they tell us is true. How do we know? How do we know if what they tell us is true? Do we just rely straight and wholly on the fact of what they know, their learning, their qualifications? Well, to a certain degree, we should, as we're going to see in this here next passage that we're going to look at. But ultimately, we should not. Only to a certain level should we rely on other men's learning or their characters. You see, Timothy faced the exact same problem, and we even face the same problem today as these officers did then. How do we know on who we should believe? Well, Paul, in the second epistle of Timothy, when he speaks to him, he says in the verse number 13, he tells Timothy, But evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. Look, Timothy, there's going to be some people coming, and they're going to try and deceive you. So how do you know what is right and what is wrong? How do you basically formulate truth? Well, the first thing that Paul tells him to do is found in verse number 14, and it says, But continue thou in the things which thou hast learned, and hast been assured of, knowing of whom thou hast learned them. Knowing of whom thou hast learned them. See, Timothy was the judge or the character of the one speaking to him, and it was Paul the apostle. And what had Paul been through that would give credibility to his message? Well, it tells us in verse number 10, But thou hast fully known my doctrine, my manner of life, purpose, faith, long-suffering, charity, patience, my persecutions, my afflictions which came unto me at Antioch, at Iconium, at Lystra, what persecutions I endured, but out of them all the Lord delivered me. So yes, the character of a man, what he knows, his position, gives a certain amount of weight to what he says. And that's what Paul is saying here. Look at my character, how I have served the Lord. Surely that gives credence to the message that I have told you. But that is subservient to the first and chief principle in how we know truth. And Paul goes on to tell Timothy what that is. And he says in verse number 15, And that from a child thou hast known the Holy Scriptures. And in verse number 16 it says, All Scripture is given by inspiration of God, and is profitable for doctrine, for reproof, for correction, for instruction in righteousness, that the man of God may be perfect, thoroughly furnished unto all good works. Yes, we can judge the man's character, his motives for saying the message, but ultimately we judge whether it's true by what the Scriptures say. So, over the coming days, when you're faced with sitting in a pew in a pulpit, or a pew with a man speaking to you from a pulpit, whether you're sitting at home listening online on Facebook or YouTube, or speaking to someone in the street, how do you know what they're telling you is true? Number one, judge their character and their motives for what they're telling you, why they're telling you it. But number two, ultimately, what are they saying? Is it in accordance and in agreement with the Scriptures? We need to be like the Berean people in Acts chapter 17. When Paul came to speak to them, they didn't openly believe everything that he said with blind faith. What they did is they approached it with a readiness of mind, ready to hear what he had said, and after they heard him, then they went away and judged what he had said against the Scriptures, and it tells us there that many of them believed. So today, when you're faced with the same circumstances as these officers had, the same circumstances as Timothy had in trying to discern what is true, let's not be a sucker to believe absolutely everything we're told blindly. Let's not be a complete skeptic and disbelieve everything we're told. But let's, number one, judge the character of the person that's telling us. But number two, and most importantly, judge what they say against the Holy Scriptures, the ultimate truth.